Recording in progress.
Greetings, everybody. Grace Ministry at Rafa, also known as Trinitarian Grace International. And I meant to say, there's Maya from Canada. We hadn't seen you in a long time, Maya. Hey, man, what a pretty girl. Oh, my goodness. So kind of looks like her mama, don't she, Blake? But anyway, I get distracted easily. But anyway, thank y'all for being here. Thank everybody online for being here, everybody in the chapel for being here. And as we know, according to the Gregorian calendar, which we use, most of the world uses, a new year is rolling around here in what, 2-3 days. And we always, we make these things that we, what they call them, New Year's resolutions, and we make all these things. And sometimes they work, and most of the time they don't. But anyway, we do it anyway. And I have some this year, and I'm going to keep them quiet because I'm trying to make them happen. But, I got to thinking as I was preparing for this, and it's been bouncing around in my head for a while, among other things that bounce around in that thing, about how, we think about biblical days, Old Testament way back then, and New Testament it was a little bit closer into us. And we think about, things were, the culture, everything was much different then. And yes, it was much different. But there's a lot of things that are the same, and it's good for us. People say, well, all this, we try not to be in this ministry. We try not to be very legalistic. We try not to lay out all these rules and regulations. Of course, we have to have a order to things. It's like we have to go by the facility guidelines, how we conduct things, and all that. And there's no problem with that. But we try not to say, well, I kid with y'all a lot. I tell you, if you don't come to church, where you going and all that kind of stuff. But the reality is, it's not what you're doing on the outside. It's what's happening on the inside. I saw something posted the other day. A lot of you have seen this. I thought there's several people I know when I thought of this. It's like church, a lot of church religion is like the guy that's here today and he's thinking about fishing. That's kind of religion. Relationship with Christ is the guy that's fishing and thinking about God. That makes sense? You could be doing, I think when we're doing things that we enjoy, whether it's fishing, hunting, bowling, shooting pool, whatever your thing is, singing, playing music, those are things that honor God. Where do you think you get those talents from? Where do we think we get that enjoyment from? That's inside of us. There's a lot of things that, like I say, the way things are today, in a lot of ways, are not so different than what was going on back then. We think, well, it was a completely different day and time. And it was, but there's a lot of things that are the same. Let me see if I can figure out how to do this again. Who knows? I might be able to do this. Okay. Bear with me. It's coming. It's working. It's computer just a little bit slower today. Wow. Y'all know the day. I titled my little message Begin. It's like we always look at the New Year's, the way we have it now, January the 1st of every year is New Year's. And we think new beginnings. Let's begin. So what do we say? We're going to do this. Well, I got to say, let's begin. Let's just live. Live the way God leads you to live. There were some things going on back. I got scriptures I'm going to use today come from the Message Bible, which can be a little wordy, but obviously I don't want to forget. Y'all see my mottos up there? Do I have them blocked or what? But God is not mad at you. I want you to know that from this ministry. And I want you to know that you're included. All are included. There's nobody excluded. Everybody's included. And the gospel is for all kinds of people. That includes me and you. That includes those people from all over the world on that screen. Includes everybody, for all kinds of people in all kinds of places. Now, even in the days of the scriptures, there was things going on. I'm going to Acts 11, 3 through 6 from the Message. God has broken through. And I'm going to read this and then I'm going to talk about it just a second. The news traveled fast, and in no time, the leaders and friends back in Jerusalem had heard about it. Heard that the non-Jewish outsiders, because you knew back then, if you weren't in that setting, if you weren't Jewish, you were out, you weren't included. That's why they looked at it. We have a lot of that in the world now. If you're not this or not that, you're not included, you know? We're now in when Peter got back to Jerusalem, some of his old associates, y'all know some of them old associates, concerned about circumcision, which was one of their rules you had to have, called him on the carpet. Said, "What in the world you think you're doing, including these non-Jewish people? What they're getting on to him about? What do you think you're doing, rubbing shoulders with that crowd, eating what is prohibited and ruining our name?" Now think about what they're jumping on him because he hung out with people that he shouldn't be hanging out with. You ever been accused of that? Sometimes you see it in the church circles. You know, I've shared before. One time I went to a church meeting here in town years ago, and they wanted to start on one of them celebrate recovery groups. Now, this church don't do that anymore, but at the time I went, they were all up because that was the going thing, you know. Oh, everybody's got to celebrate recovery. Everybody's getting into this rehab stuff. Let's start us one. So they invited us to go. So we loaded up a bunch of guys here and took them to the meeting. And they're all out back and they're all out there smoking, you know. And some, as we call them, blue-haired lady walked by and she says, "I didn't know that it was going to be these kind of people." I didn't tell her what I wanted to tell her, but because she's included too. You understand what I'm saying? We all at different places in our journey. That's what a lot of people want the surface thing. They want to be known. We're helping those drug addicts and those alcoholics, but they don't want to, quote, rub shoulders with those folks. You get where I'm coming from? And it's not just drug addicts, alcoholics, all kind of people. We all get these prejudices in our mind against certain people. It can be racial. It can be cultural. It's all kind of stuff. And they're jumping on this guy, Peter. You know, Peter's a pretty rough old boy. You know, he's the guy that cut the guy's ear off when they arrested Jesus. So he had a little temper. But he also told Jesus he'd never forsake him, never deny him. But he ended up denying him 3 times before daylight rolled around. He kind of reminds me of some of us. We talk big until it gets rough. I'm talking about myself now. We make these promises that you can count on me. And then when it gets rough, you're like, "Well, I'll try to send you some wham money or something." Yeah. You guys on the line, you don't know what that means. Yeah, these guys are playing too. But you get what I'm saying? So Peter is this kind of guy. He's hanging out with these folks, you know. He says, starting from the beginning, laid it out for them step. But recently, I was in the town of Joppa praying. There's a Joppa around here, but this is not the one. This is one in the Middle East. I fell into a trance and saw a vision, something like a huge blanket, lowered by ropes at its 4 corners, came down out of heaven and settled on the ground in front of me. This guy's having a dream now. Milling around on the blanket were farm animals, wild animals, reptiles, birds, you name it. It was there. Fascinated. I took it all in. And for those of you here that don't know what that's about, in those days, and even now, Jewish people, Islamic people, different kind of people have laws about what they eat and don't eat. That's what he's really, but that's where that was. They thought that's what, a lot of people thought that's what they were saying. He was talking about all these, what they called unclean animals, were all mixed together. And they went on to explain that Christ let him know what I've declared unclean, what I've declared clean is not unclean. And he was talking about more than food. He was talking about me and you. He was saying, I declare all man to be clean in his eyes. You get where I'm coming from? It don't matter if he's white, black, brown, yellow, or a mixture thereof. He says all are clean in Christ's eyes. Now, we all have our prejudices about things. It don't have to be racial. It can be other stuff. We don't like people from this state or that state, or we don't like, all kind of things we come up with. Even those of us that are trying our best to be inclusive. Because one of the biggest lies that Satan's ever laid on us is that we're separated from God and that he's holding something back from us. That started in the story of the Adam and Eve. What they do, symbolically, they ate from the tree that they were not supposed to eat from, right? Well, what did they say? What was they saying? He must be hiding something from us. He's given us everything, but now he must be, we're told not to do that, so he must be trying to hide something from us, hold something back. You feel me? That's what we do. We have everything, but we'll see something we're told not to that, but then we want what we're told not to have or not to touch. Peter here is saying, hey, I've come to understand that everybody is what's really telling us that we're not separated. We're all included. Acts 15, 12 through 18. This is Barnabas and Paul are explaining to a group of people. There was dead silence. No one said a word. It'd be like you being real quiet and being actually interested in what I'm having to say. If pretend like you are anyway. With the room quiet, Barnabas and Paul reported matter-of-factly on the miracles and wonders God had done among the other nations through their ministry. The silence deepened. You ever had silence? You ever notice people be real quiet, but then they get really, really quiet? You can feel it because that means they're listening. There's something to that. You could hear a pin drop. James broke the silence. Friends, listen. Simeon has told us the story of how God, at the very outset, made sure that racial outsiders, there's that word, were included. And this can be, back then they're talking about Jews and they're talking about non-Jewish people. You hear me? It's telling them that they're not included, but he's telling them here that they are included. This is a perfect agreement with the words of the prophets. After this, I'm coming back. I'll rebuild David's ruined house, in other words, the temple. I'll put all the pieces together again. I'll make it look like new. So outsiders who seek will find, so they'll have a place to come to. All the pagan peoples, even writing this, is using the word pagan. What's a pagan? No, it's not a microclub. It can be. Include what I'm doing. All the pagan peoples. Satan would have us all believe that we're all pagans, that we're not included because that crap you did, there ain't no way you're going to be forgiven of that. But we are included in what I'm doing. God said it. Now he's doing it. It's no afterthought. He's always known he would do this. Jesus Christ knew from the very beginning. John 1:1 tells you who was at creation. When everything was being created, it tells us that Christ was there. It's not God, the mean old man, and Christ, the guy that's trying to get him to don't do them in, Father. Let me try to talk them into doing right. And the Holy Spirit run around there. Well, it pointing at them all to how to help them. They're all one and the same. What did it say? Somebody want to know what Father looked like. God the Father, a lot of big. Jesus Christ said, well, you've seen me, you've seen the Father. And God is love, so Jesus Christ is love, Holy Spirit's love, and that's dwelling in me and you. We just don't always live it out that way. In John, what is that, 8? Something else. John 8 through 10, the religious scholars and Pharisees, we got them now, don't we? All these very religious people that know all the rules and regulations and can quote Bible scripture to you. You know, I'll say one, they'll say, well, where'd that come from? I say, somewhere in the Bible. I don't remember exactly. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with memorizing Bible scriptures, but some people, that's what they do. They memorize Bible scriptures, but they don't have a clue what they're saying. It's kind of like we go to church now, some of us, we go to different churches and different groups, and we learn all there is to know about God. But do you ever get to the point where you know God? It's not learning about God, it's getting to know God in your life and the way you live your life. Like I said, just live. The way you learn more about God is just living your life. We're not stupid. We can do stupid stuff, but we're not stupid. You know if you're doing something that's wrong. Come on now. You know, since you're a little bitty boy or girl, you know when something's wrong. There's something, when you did something wrong, when you was a kid or even as an adult, did there not something flip in your stomach when you knew you was doing it? What do you think that is? That's the Holy Spirit of God saying, that's a bad idea. But it don't slap it out of your hand. It don't drag you down. It don't strike you dead with a lightning bolt. It just lets you know we should live from within, not without. And it lets you know from within what you're doing is not right. And you know it, and I know it. So let's don't act like we don't know it. It's kind of like people, you know, I've worked around the rehabs for many, many years. It's like when they come in there, I didn't know that was against the rules. Come on, dude. Common sense tell you that's against the rules. I had a guy one time that kept borrowing somebody else's cosmetics. And I and I sat him down and it took me forever to get him to admit. I said, so he admitted he would get the guy's stuff and use it. I said, so what do they call that? It took me 30 minutes and he finally said, stealing? Yes. You got it. They call that stealing. Y'all feel me how we do sometimes? We beat around the bush. The story I'm going to cover here is just a good one. It's a good example for any of us. The religious scholars and Pharisees, you know, the people I was just talking about, you know, the real judgmental type people that know all the rules and regulations. They know all there is to know about God. They stood in plain sight of everyone and said, teacher, they brought this woman out. They had caught her red-handed in the act of adultery. Moses, in the law, there you go to them law, the rules, regulations, gives orders to stone such persons. The rule of that time was if you catch somebody having sex and they're not married and all that stuff, you took the woman out. And they didn't say that about the man. They caught a woman in an act of adultery. They took her out in the square and stoned her to death. Okay. And they did this in front of Jesus. And they said the law, Moses, the law says that we're supposed to take her out. What do you say? They were trying to trap Jesus. That's who they're talking to into saying something incriminating so they could bring charges against him. They're getting him, well, he's going to take up for this. You know, they're going to take up for this, you know, this HO, and we're going to get him too. Jesus bent down and wrote with his finger in the dirt. They kept at him, badgering him. He straightened up and said, the sinless one among you go first. Throw the stone. Bending down again, he wrote some more in the dirt. Hearing that, they walked away, one after another, beginning with the oldest, which would mean the oldest, the one that had been around following after these rules and regulations longest. He stood up, he dropped his stone, and they walked away. You've heard in other, they says, he who is without sin cast the first stone, right? That's what he told her. He told the woman, she was left alone there. Jesus stood up and spoke to her, woman, where are they? Does no one condemn you? And I heard someone say recently somewhere, it's like, I was watching a a TV show is kind of a religious show or something. But I know it was a movie about a female on death row. And this guy was ministering to her while she's on death row. And he told her the story about the girl caught in adultery. And she said she'd never been churched at all in her life. She said, well, what was he writing on the ground? And the priest or whoever he was, he said, we're really not sure. We've never been told that. Later in the thing, right before she sent to her death, she called him to her and she said, Father, talking to the priest, I figured out what Jesus was writing in the dirt. And he said, what's that? She said, my name. Think about that. I think he was writing my name in that dirt. What do you think? You think he was writing your name in that dirt? I believe that's a pretty powerful little statement right there. Because it's never said in scripture what he was just down there scribbling. That's a good way to think about that, isn't it? He was waiting for somebody, because we've all done wrong, waiting for somebody to cast the first stone, and they walked away because they couldn't. He might have been writing. I wonder if he could spell Rannie in Hebrew. That's pretty cool. I'm sure he could. Colossians 3:9-11. I'll be careful not get too long-winded. Don't lie to one another. Well, good luck with that. You're done with that old life. This is talking to us guys here at the rehab. Let's think about what it just said to us. I skipped something else. Or did I? Nope. Don't lie to one another. You're done with that old life, are you? Are you done with that old life? I don't know. You got a new year coming up. You got a new day coming up. You got a new life coming up. But whose choice is that? It's your choice. It's like a filthy set of ill-fitting clothes you stripped off and put in the fire. Now you're dressed in a new wardrobe. New. You and I are new. You know, we never were. We in our mind decided that we were used up, no good. Christ says you are new. You walk in newness of life. Every item of your new way of life is custom made. Every one of us has a custom made life laid out in front of us. You don't have to be no hooty toot, holier than thou, you know, preaching at people. Just be a decent human being and live your life and treat people. Some cliches that we hear our whole life, you get a little older and start thinking about them. They're pretty important. Treat others the way you want to be treated. How many of us fall short? No, I do. Sometimes I treat others, I shouldn't treat them that way. Sometimes I say things to my wife. Sometimes I say things to anybody. The guy that I think cut me off in traffic. I mean, I don't you hear what I said to him. I mean, we left here last Sunday and we like got killed up here at the traffic light. Somebody ran the red light and just luckily we had the turn signal and I was about to pull out. And just so happened, I glanced up and a car came by doing about 60. If I had to just went by the light and not looked, I wouldn't be doing the message today, not from here. But you never know. That's how quick things can happen. But that's why we need to be aware of what's going on around you, but be more aware of what's going on within you. Words like Jewish and non-Jewish, Caucasian, African American, African, how's that sound? Mexican, Puerto Rican. We got all these labels, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with those kind of labels because, you know, for the most part, I'm Caucasian. Not all the way, but most part. But we got all this Jewish, non-Jewish, religious, irreligious. We got, you know, what we call secular, non-secular, insider, outsider, uncivilized, slave or free. They mean nothing. None of that means nothing in the eyes of Jesus Christ. What race you are, what your economic status is, what your education level is, means nothing to Jesus Christ. We're all included in the love of God. My friend Judas, real quick, talk about him for a minute. Because there's a lot of people that think Judas is right now burning in hell. Believe that if you want to, or that he's going to. This starts out when Judas got up as what is commonly known as the Lord's Supper, the Last Supper. And he basically told Judas, go do what you got to do. He didn't come out and say it, but he knew Judas betrayed him. So Jesus took his piece of bread and he took off. Well, after he left, Jesus said in this translation says, now the Son of Man is seen for who he is, because he's telling these other disciples, I'm going, I'm leaving, that's when Peter jumped up and said, no, don't let me. He washed their feet, let them know he's their servant. Jesus, Peter, the guy I was talking about a while ago, no, don't wash my feet. If you're going to wash me, wash the whole thing. Peter was real. You met guys like him. Sometimes you meet him in the mirror, right? He's just real hyper, or he wants to, I got this figured out. That's when he told Jesus, I won't betray you. Jesus told him what? Before the rooster crows, you'll deny you even know me. Mm-hmm. But during this time, he said, you've seen for who he is. God's seen for who he is in him. The moment God is seen in him, God's glory will be on display, glorifying him. He himself is glorified. Glory all around. I like it says that, glory all around to all of us. You know what? Y'all know the story. Judas got what? 30 pieces of silver, right? I don't know if he knew they were going to kill Jesus. He got 30 pieces. That lets you know that Jesus did not. He didn't stand out as different from everybody else. They had to hire somebody to point him out. He didn't walk around with a halo floating around his head and I'm Jesus. He was walking around with barefooted and all that like everybody else. And they'd heard about him. They heard people talking about him. But it's like somebody introduced me one time as a pastor and they're like, what? You get me? That's my point. He's the pastor? I'm like, well, you ain't got to say it like that. But that makes my point. They didn't even know what Jesus looked like. They had to hire dude. You point him out so we can arrest him. I don't know if they told him we're going to arrest him, brutalize him, and murder him. I think they just said point him out. Here's this money. We're going to point him out. And we're going to arrest this dude. Judas, he was the treasurer of the group, so money must have been kind of one of his things. He was like, oh, okay. We'll bond him out later or something. I mean, whatever. Just think about it. In the first light of dawn, all the high priests and religious leaders were putting the finishing touches. That's when they're talking about what they're going to do with this dude, Jesus, now that they got him. They tied him, they prayed him up to see Pilate. You don't know about the story. Judas, our friend Judas, wanted to realize that Judas was doomed. He didn't realize. I think he just came to realize that they're going. Man, I don't know. I'm just telling you what I kind of think. I think it dawned on him they're going to kill this dude that I walked around with and was friends with, and he trusted me with all the group's money and everything. So what did he do? He went back. He gave back the 30 pieces of silver and said, I've sinned. I've betrayed an innocent man. Now, a man that comes to that determination, throws back the money and says, I've sinned. Does that sound like a man that God would banish to hell? Well, you go to some churches, they're going to tell you, nah, there ain't no way Judas is going to make it. Y'all hear me? That's a good story for me and you. I've done a lot worse in my life than sell somebody out for 30 pieces of silver. Haven't you? You ain't got to raise your hand. Hell, I know you. You've done as bad or worse than me, or we've all done stuff, man, that qualifies for what Judas that people have condemned Judas to hell, not just death, but to eternal punishment. And they told him, just like a lot of people do when they talk you into going along with their wrongdoing, when you decide, well, I'm done with that, they go, why do we care? That's your problem. Remember I said you go along with your buddies and y'all end up busted, and, and you end up being the one locked up, and they're like, hey, that's your problem, dude. You got caught. Make sense? Sorry. I don't know if it don't make sense. John 1, 16 through 18. I'm hurry along here. We all live off his generous abundance. Every one of us. The breath of life is a gift. Gift after gift. We got the basics from Moses. Moses introduced us to God in scriptures. And then this exuberant giving and receiving, this endless knowing and understanding. All this came through Jesus, the Messiah. No one has ever seen God, not so much as a glimpse. This is a one-of-a-kind God expression. Who exists in the very heart of the Father has made him plain as day. Jesus said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. He was no longer invisible. When you look in the mirror and you see Christ in the mirror, because he's there, because he lives in you, he's no longer invisible. Now we can set a bad example by the way we live. Romans 8, 1 and 2. The solution is life on God's terms. With the arrival of Jesus the Messiah, that faithful dilemma is resolved. Those who enter into Christ's being for us no longer have to live under a continuous low-lying cloud. You ever get wrapped up, and you may have friends here at the rehab that they're just so bummed out about this situation. And I know we go through them stuff, but you don't have to walk around with that dark cloud floating over your head all the time. That's when we lift one another up and say, hey, man, it's going to get better. It's going to get better. You're not going to be here forever. You're going to be here for a short time. What is a few months or even a year of investment in the rest of your life? It's a small investment with a big payoff. A new power is in operation, especially if you start realizing that you have the greatest power that exists residing right there in you. That's something to think about now. If you don't believe that, I'm sorry, but it's true. I've said this before, just because you don't believe something don't mean it's not true. I've seen it too much. I've seen that play out too much in the world around me and in my own life to know I know it's true. The spirit of life in Christ, like a strong wind, has magnificently cleared the air, freeing you from a fated lifetime of brutal tyranny at the hands of sin and death. We're no longer trapped by sin and death because of Christ. Even though I am free of the demands and expectations of everyone, I have voluntarily, this is Paul talking. Y'all remember Paul, right? This is a dude who run around killing other folks that believe. And he was one of the worst of the Pharisees and all that. And he run around having people killed. No wonder they wouldn't have anything to do with him. Wrote most of the New Testament from jail, from prison. And their prison is much worse than the prison you've ever seen. Dungeon, chained to the wall. Man, I was in prison. We got to get out and play softball and stuff. Come on now. Even though I am free of the demands and expectations, I have voluntarily become a servant to any and all in order to reach a wide variety of people. Religious, non-religious, meticulous moralists, loose-living moralists, immoralists, the defeated, the demoralized, whoever. What's he saying? He's saying everybody's included. He said, this is for those who are trying to live right. It's also for those who are not trying to live right. The only difference is the ones trying to live right have come to the knowledge and awareness of who they really are. And the others are still trapped in that not being aware of who they really are. Think about that. I entered in their world and tried to experience things from their point of view. That's called empathy. It's trying to see something from your point of view. I didn't grow up in the inner city in the projects. How did I learn about that? By becoming friends with someone who has. You hear what I'm saying? I say things that people say, oh, I don't believe he said that. I mean, the real world is the real world. We all grow up in different environments and different backgrounds and all this. How do we learn how the other guy, what he had to go through if I don't become friends with him and learn about where he come from? And then if he learns where I come from and what I've been through, then we got something going on. Those are friendships. Those are bonds. You know, something to think about. I learned, I might have someone, I never did crack. So how do I know about crack? I have somebody that has done a lot of crack. Tell me about it. Kennedy. I didn't take on their way of life. I didn't have to smoke crack to learn about crack. You get what I'm saying? I did a lot of other stuff, but that's my point. Get my point, though. I don't have to take on the wrongdoing to learn how that is. I learn it from you. And what I've been through, you learn from me. I bet most of you've never spent 10 years in a maximum security prison, have you? You can learn that from me. I know about that. And I don't say that as a badge of honor. I say it as the truth, as an example, how we learn from one another. I've become just about every sort of servant there is in my attempt to lead those I meet into a God-saved life. And that's what I've tried to do with my life for the last 20, 30 years. I ain't always been real good at it. I ain't always, but I've been trying. I'm still doing it. I'm still reaching out. Some people hear what I have to say, some don't. But someday, every one of us, every one of you, you're going to be standing somewhere and somebody's going to say something and it's going to make sense. You say, I heard that old Rannie guy say that one time. You hear me? That's worth thinking about. I did all this because of the message of Jesus Christ. I didn't just want to talk about it. I wanted to be in on it. And that's the way I am with you guys. I don't want to talk at you. I want to talk with you. I want to talk to you, not at you or preach at you or make you feel bad, because we get enough of that just in the world we live in. Okay. Oh, there you go. Anyway, I'll run over just a few minutes, but we got to start a few minutes late. Thank y'all for listening. You guys here, I hope you got something out. Everybody, I hope you got something out of what I mean. Just live your life. Just be who you really are. And who are you? You're a fulfilled, whole, complete, unconditionally loved child of God. No matter where you're from, how old you are, what color you are, what language you speak, that's the truth. And it'll serve you well to learn about one another, learn where other people come from, learn about what they've been through, so we won't be as judgmental as we tend to be. Man, I can be one of the most judgmental people in the world and turn around and talk about, Lord, forgive me. Don't y'all? Let's just look at ourselves the way we really are and learn from that. Thank you all for listening. I know I've been rambling on, but God bless you all. And I hope that you do have a wonderful 2025 coming up and that we see you again here next week.